is criminal. That is an illegal fraud being perpetrated on the government and the people who funded the offices. Now imagine a group that has the malicious intent to hoax a threat from outer space so that they can consolidate global power around fear and control, which is what fear does. That organization is really holding all the technology cards, and that's dangerous. And how do you fix that? I'm not trying to put this in a negative light. I'm just saying we got a lot of work to do.
Dr. Greer, this is a really important point that I'd like for you to unpack. There's this very common misunderstanding that, oh, it's the government that's covering this up.
Yeah.
And they conflate the government with this legacy group. And as you've said many times, this legacy group is transnational. And if they want to be the US, they can be the US. If they want to operate as China, they can do that. They could operate as a terror group. Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yes, I mean, part of the problem of the unchecked power of a group with this kind of technology and intent, which has not been terribly good, it's been rather a malicious intent over the last 70 years. And Eisenhower warned of this when he said, beware the military-industrial complex and it will be a threat to our democracy and way of life. He knew that because on his watch, unfortunately, the whole matter went sideways. And he basically was betrayed by people he trusted, and they seized the levers of control over these reverse engineering and other operations dealing with UFOs, UAPs, NHI, extraterrestrial, whatever you want to call them. And that happened around the time they had the Eureka moment in October 1954, and we had the breakthrough and had mastered what's called gravity control, the ability to control gravitational fields through very high voltage electromagnetic systems that reach transdimensionally. I'm not going to get into the physics of it. It's understood at the atomic and subatomic level, but that was achieved 1 year before I was born, ironically, or almost a year before I was born. And once they realized what they had, they deepened the secrecy. And folks like Alan Dulles and others pretty much began to push the president, never mind members of Congress, out of oversight. And so that's the way it's been since the late 50s, unfortunately. Most people have this weird idea that just because you're the prime minister of the UK or the president of France or the president of the United States or whoever, that you're read into this sort of parallel secret government infrastructure that's rogue. And they're not. Now, are there people in the US government, even some politicians who are, let's say, on the payroll or tied into that operation? Absolutely, yes. Have there always been? Yes, because you embed those people almost as agents that are embedded to thwart anything that would begin to disclose the truth about that. That's what we encountered. So this is nuanced. I mean, most people say, well, why is the government keeping this secret? I say, well, 90+%, 99% of everybody works in the US government or British government or any other government know nothing about this. If you've seen the film Unacknowledged, you know more about this subject than 90+% of all federal officials here and abroad. Fact. And this is, I've been in so many meetings with members of Senate, House, White House folks, Pentagon, senior Pentagon people. And the idea that just because you have a 3 stars or 4 stars, or that you're the president, or you're the CI director, or you're the chair or co-chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, that you have an all-access information on this. It simply isn't true. And this is where that part of this is the hardest thing for both government officials to acknowledge, because no one wants to be the emperor that has no clothes, right? And you're like, well, this is all going on and we don't control it. It's scary. It's scary to those people, and it could be frightening to the general public. But the fact is, that is one of the biggest things that have to be fixed. So these guys coming forward isn't the end of anything. It's the very beginning of another phase of disclosure that's going to require the government of we, the people, to act to secure the technologies, move the safe ones out, like free energy, quote unquote, 0 point, things that would run your house, your car, your factory with no pollution and no energy bill either, by the way. But control some of the other technologies that could be a weapon system, that's legit. And then also fix this parallel world of rogue secret government operations who now possess those technologies and who have used them in all kinds of terrifying events. Now, what am I referring to here? Anyone who's ever gone to a UFO conference or seen a documentary, it's replete with all kinds of frightening alien encounters, known as abductions and mutilations and things of this sort. I have met with and debriefed a number of people who have been operational at sites that have manned the man-made UFOs and directed the fake, they look gray, or there are different shapes of fake aliens that have been engaged in this kind of false flag operation it's a psyop, trying to be sure people are afraid of the aliens, because the long-term agenda that was hashed in the mid-50s was to create this specter of a threat from outer space that would unite the whole world fighting them. That's the meta big agenda that has driven everything else, including all the disinformation on the subject. So as this comes out, one of the biggest tasks we're going to have is managing let's call it the legacy of disinformation and frightening portrayals of NHI, non-human intelligence, with what the truth is. But so far, it's all commingled. And people have had already 70 years of psychological brainwashing and prejudice built in about all things alien. So I think this is something that we can't whistle past that graveyard. It's the biggest problem with disclosure, totally. Is that it's like a pre-positioned weapon of mass destruction psychologically that's been embedded into human awareness for the past 70 years. And remember, we just passed in October of 2024, the 70-year anniversary of us mastering gravity control. And they began to build man-made ARVs, they used to be called alien reproduction vehicles, that looked like a UFO, and then began to realize, well, gee, we can use this in all kinds of skullduggery. This is why we've been trying to get the document from the CIA that Jacques Vallée possesses and some other people possess that says, it's an entry in Jacques Vallée's book from 1992, where he says he has a document where the CIA describes a psychological warfare operation in Brazil and Argentina using these advanced technologies to abduct peasants, their words, abduct peasants, and to create the specter of an alien threat. Now that's in black and white. It's a document. Those are the kinds of documents that we're recommending that law enforcement seize and get, because it will prove what we've been saying for 30 years, that I've been saying for 30 years, is that there's the actual UFOs that are extraterrestrial. They're the man-made ones. And we're going to do this. In a minute, I'm going to go through, if my assistant can pull out some of these images. And we're going to we'll put them up on the screen for people. And that is the contrast between the man-made ones and the fake ones, right? I mean, the real ones and the man-made ones. They look very, very similar superficially, but at close range, they're very different. A man-made one back from the 50s and 60s had rivets and bolts in the interior of the ARV that you see in our archive from the Norton Air Show in 1988, where there was 3 of them in a hangar. Those had components inside them. The witness who was there, Brad Sorensen, who he said those were basically Mercury era. So that's late 50s, early 60s. And they had been a little bit of scorch marks. They had been out in our solar system. Now people say this can't be. That's, that's 10 years before we landed on the moon in the lunar module, right? In the Apollo mission. But see, this is 2 separate programs, and never the twain shall meet. Now there are points of contact that are extremely compartmented. But the people running these super secret projects are their own power center. And the unchecked power they have that's risky here, I'm just going to lay this out. I always tell people I'm an emergency doctor. If you've got a brain tumor, I ain't going to tell you you've got a migraine. I don't say, I'm sorry, you got a brain tumor. But in this case, this is a very big risk, and that is organizations and corporations and operations, all here and abroad, that's in this transnational group that doesn't care about boundaries, political boundaries between US, China, Russia, Canada, and whatever. I mean, the whole world is their operating theater of operations. So, and they operate that way. And they can, in one instant, look like they're coming from one country or another. But people haven't figured out yet, it's all this same entity, no matter where it's originating. Now, remember that if you're in the 1960-ish range and you've got something that is electrogravitic or gravitic propulsion that was stable enough to go out in our solar system, what do you think they have now, right? 65 years, 2/3 of a century later, because they have continued to down and capture these craft. Trillions have been spent on reverse engineering them, and there have been massive breakthroughs in propulsion, material sciences, AI, not what's coming out of Silicon Valley, but very advanced systems involving consciousness and machine, all manner of developments that sound like science fiction, but it isn't. And now imagine a group that has the malicious intent to hoax a threat from outer space so that they can consolidate global power around fear and control, which is what fear does. I look at the response to COVID and 9/11. It results in people suspending their intellect and their rational mind because the fear overrides the rational intellect. And that's how you get in trouble. But it's also how demagogues and people who are very good at psychological warfare operations can manipulate people into catastrophic events like the disasters of the wars in the Middle East that we're not even extricated fully from yet, in Iraq and Afghanistan, that occurred after 9/11. Probably a really good example of this, which is you can fact check this, is the Gulf and Tonkin incident, and that in the 60s, where we exaggerated and many people believe staged an attack on our own Navy vessels in the Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam, so that it would create an outrage in the public, and the public then demanded action. And it kind of maneuvered President Johnson into vastly expanding the Vietnam War, which of course ended up costing hundreds of thousands or millions of lives, if you count the Asian lives, which are humans too, not to mention the 58,000 American men and women who died, but also cost trillions of dollars in today's equivalent US dollars, all of which went to the military-industrial complex. So we have to be aware of the fact that they have the ability to stage many events that look like they are alien, and they are not. And the reason no one can accept that is that they're not willing, in my opinion, to stop and do a deep research and analysis on where trillions of dollars and 70 years with some of the most brilliant minds I've ever met have been working. And you've got the actual functioning ET craft there. Many of them were brought down and they're still operational, right? So under those conditions, you're going to have these huge breakthroughs in research and development and applied sciences that have been very, very kept extremely secret. And when they're kept extremely secret, away from oversight by we the people and our representatives, that's the perfect storm for things getting out of control. And so the big task now for the government, now that this is going to be coming out with more and more proof, evidence, and whistleblowers, and I predict this group, these courageous guys like Jake Barber and others coming forward, will open the floodgates to many, many others, right? So now what? that what we have to look at, now we're at this inflection point where to go forward, the U.S. government can no longer sit on its hands and put its head in the sand like an ostrich. They're going to have to act, but they're going to have to act in a way that benefits humanity and the United States and doesn't just get played into the hands of these master manipulators. The master manipulators will try to maneuver this subject into the false alien threat scenario. But why? Because that's always been their objective. This is why in 1999, I had published a paper called When Disclosure Serves Secrecy. It's in our archive. It's on our website, drstephengreer.com. And the reason I wrote that is that I already had discovered about 6-7 years earlier that there was a plan that was already being acted on through some of the psychological warfare programs and scary things in Hollywood and movies about aliens and staging horrific abductions and mutilations of Catalan people, and that this was all a psyop being run by humans masquerading as alien. Now, that part of this story, no one wants to talk about. They just don't. I mean, people have completely taken it as an article of faith, that mythology. And it's a dangerous mythology, because if you accept that as true, then you would say, well, there are these malicious aliens and we should go to war. And there you are, you're back at the movie Independence Day and we're in Armageddon. We're in World War III. That trajectory is the real danger of these disclosures happening if the people can be hoodwinked and fooled again, like the WHO said, we won't be fooled again. They wrote that in the early 70s about the Vietnam War. We've been fooled multiple times since. So I would suggest we not be fooled on this one. This is the one that you cannot muck up. And right now, we're at a distinct disadvantage for a couple of reasons. One is that the people in the government who are legally there, who are not read in adequately on this, don't have enough information to make the assessment I just shared. Number two, without the correct assessment, you can't make a plan. In other words, the executive orders that need to be done flow from that body of knowledge and evidence. But you have to master that amount of information before you can reach those conclusions. And then lastly, you have to be able to stand up a law enforcement expeditionary force, an investigation and a force, so that if the people who are provided amnesty say, no, we don't want it, we're going to continue on this path of misusing and abusing these technologies, right? Then those have to be sat down by any means necessary. And that is going to take, we know the team that is ready to do that. I've been briefing them. They're incredibly courageous special forces guys who had not been read into this subject, and we've been providing them with, let's call it actionable intelligence now for about 20 months. And they continue to get more information now that they have known where to look, right? So, but that has to be authorized by the US government. Those guys cannot act unilaterally. So this is where this disclosure needs to be part of an activist program where we, the people, ask the president and the Congress to take these specific acts. Number one, extend full immunity and amnesty to people willing to come forward so that the maximum number of people come forward and it won't be a violent encounter, let's say. Secondly, you have to provide protection for the whistleblowers much stronger than it exists currently, which is in the executive order I just referred to that's going through review currently in the U.S. government. And then on top of it, you've got to be able to put the funding in place to do a proper investigation of the subject that's clean. Now, what do I mean by that? Non-corrupted. The AARO operations, up until very recently, I can't speak for the last few months, there's a new director, have been part of a cover-up, and we can prove this. And the previous director, Dr. Kirkpatrick, I can prove, and I have witnesses who can prove, that testimony, information, data provided to them was covered up, went into a top secret compartment, that the current director doesn't have access to at AARO, and that was never provided to the oversight committees that set that office up. I know this for a fact. So I have actually said
what sort of information is not allowed to get through, and what